The B Plus Wrestling Podcast.
The Moose.
You might not be an A, but you are a B plus.
Check it out! Here we go! You wanna mess with us? That's what's funny on the ground.
All right, ladies, gents, and non-binary friends, welcome to another B Plus podcast. I'm your host, GregUnchained. Today is Friday. You know what that means. It's Aussie Grapps Day. It's our favorite day here at the B Plus podcast. It's the day we sit down to take a look at all the things happening in the world of Australian professional wrestling. We also like to speak to an Aussie grappler or grappler adjacent person. This week, I'm breaking my rule, breaking the gimmick, killing the gimmick off, and speaking to someone I'm dubbing an honorary Aussie grappler. The first honorary Aussie grappler, it really should go to Will Ospreay. But I haven't got a Will Ospreay interview here. I've got an interview with someone who spent a good time of August in Australia doing seminars, doing shows. He's a former WWE Cruiserweight champion, the first Cruiserweight champion of the current lineage, the winner of the Cruiserweight Classic, one of the champions of 205 Live. I am talking, of course, TJ Perkins, the Philam Flash. He's my interview this week. We talk about his time in Australia. We talk about him returning to Impact, New Japan, his upcoming visit to the Philippines. Of course, we all know I'm a huge champion of the Southeast Asian wrestling scene. I think things are really hot in the world of independent Southeast Asian wrestling, including Australia and New Zealand. And so it was really cool to sit down and talk to TJP about that and about his time with 205 Live and all that sort of stuff. But we'll get to that interview soon. First, let's take a look at this week in Aussie Grapps news. Okay, so addressing the elephant in the room. I didn't have an episode last week, just personal issues kept me away from recording, kept me away from having an interview, so I thought I'd roll it all into one. Good news here is September's kind of a quiet month for us here in the Aussie Grapps community. Not a whole lot going on in September. I'm told that it's mostly because it's Grand Finals month. Not a lot of people want to run Grand Finals month because sporting fans are going elsewhere and not necessarily going to check out the local Grapps. It makes a lot of sense to me, but there is still some big news coming out of Aussie wrestling at the moment. The biggest, of course, probably is Indi Hartwell has officially signed to NXT. She even showed up in a picture with Triple H, Brendan Vink, and Rhea Ripley, and a bunch of the other Aussies signed to, I think Shane Haste was in the picture as well. A bunch of the Aussies signed to NXT. There was a picture of them backstage at the USA taping, live show. Sorry, it wasn't a taping, it was a live show. And so Indi Hartwell was there. Impressive, of course, being signed with NXT. Amazing. We speculated that was where she was going, and then, of course, there were rumors that was where she was going, and now it can be confirmed because she's there. She's in Florida. Congratulations, Indi Hartwell. We know you're going to kill it. Indi Hartwell's sent in bits and pieces for the show in the past, but I haven't actually ever had a chance to sit down and speak with Indi Hartwell. Hopefully that changes at some point in the future. Obviously, now that she's in NXT, it's going to be a lot harder to get a chance to have a chat with her, but we're big fans of Indi Hartwell. I'm actually currently sitting here wearing my Support Indie Wrestling t-shirt. Wish her all the best with her journey in NXT, and we know she's going to kill it. Cannot wait to see her show up on USA TV live. It's going to be amazing. Speaking of people killing it overseas, Robbie Eagles obviously doing big things in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He recently took part in the Super J Cup. He's over there as part of the Road to Destruction and Destruction Tour. He's got a massive main event. You can hear us talk about that stuff on the flagship show, which will be coming out tomorrow. But he has also been announced as the first competitor for the British J Cup coming up. So Rev Pro announced that overnight, Thursday night, as I'm recording this early Friday morning. So Robbie Eagles, the first competitor to be announced for the British J Cup. Congratulations, Robbie. I'm picking him as the winner. I like to do this. I did it with Matty Warburg for Coliseum before he was even announced. I'm going to pick the winners here. Robbie Eagles for the British J Cup. Hopefully going over. It would be amazing to see him go over El Fantasmo in the final. I'm just putting that out there. Locally, though, we had some big stuff happen last week. RCW tested a live stream on YouTube for RCW Live 50, which is one of their academy shows. Really good show. Definitely worth checking out. I've talked about Riot City Wrestling before. They're one of my home promotions here in Adelaide, and they are very, very accessible, obviously, because all their stuff's on YouTube. You can watch all their major shows on YouTube. This one was streamed live. Lots of fun. I'm really happy to see more companies doing live streams. I know FWA are going to be streaming their big Civil War show in October coming up, which is going to be amazing. They've got the Nations taking on Debauchery. Debauchery sort of their big stable there, and it's really, really big fan of all of that stuff. So FWA doing live streaming as well. Obviously, Wrestle Rampage do some live streams. We know Newcastle Pro Wrestling, obviously, that's on tomorrow night. This weekend, Nui Pro are on OVO Play, PWA on OVO Play. The more live wrestling content we get, the better. And this is something where, people talk about the UK scene booming and all that sort of stuff. And on-demand services like Demand Progress and these sorts of things really helped that. And I think that the next step in the evolution of pro wrestling is live, right? In independent wrestling TV, they do Chikara live. They do various shows live, obviously Fight TV with GCW, Impact, all the best wrestling shows you can think of happen live. And there's a reason for that, is because when you're watching live, anything can happen. It's way easier to get invested in something that is happening literally right now as I'm watching it. This is happening somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in the country. And it's so much easier to get invested and to communicate with other people. If I'm watching Demand Progress and I'm watching the show at my own leisure, which is wonderful as well. It's a fantastic system, don't get me wrong. But if I'm watching at my own leisure, I can't go onto Twitter and look at the hashtag and get involved with other people. We've seen PWA with Overplay with the Rumble. They were trending #1 Australia-wide for a period of time during that Rumble show, which TJP, our guest this week, was a part of. And so it's a big thing. It's a big thing being able to engage with the community live and all experience this one thing that's happening together as it unfolds. I want to see RCW live hashtags get trending. I want to see MCW jump on the train. They're the big one. They're the big one that really, like, MCW 9 is coming up, and I wish I could be there, but for financial reasons I can't. I'd already committed to going to Coliseum when that was announced way back when, and so I bought my plane tickets and my tickets to Coliseum and stuff. I can't afford to go to both, and I would really love to be able to be a part of that live experience and be able to see these events unfold live as they're happening. Watch the women's tournament, the crowning of the first ever MCW women's champion. I get there is an argument for shows to be kept just for the people who see them live, and that can help draw live attendance, especially in smaller places. But in somewhere as geographically spread apart as Australia, I feel like live, it's such a smart move. And seeing more companies like FWA, like RCW, like Wrestle Rampage, like PWA, seeing these companies go live, like we're spearheading that as a scene, and it's fantastic, and I'm really happy to see it happening. So big props to RCW for going live on YouTube. I hope to see it continue. I would love to see more people get onto the OVO Play platform. I want to see, because the channel is called Australian Professional Wrestling. It's not called Pro Wrestling Australia. It's called Australian Professional Wrestling. And Bonza talked about that in an interview on, I don't know if it was on our podcast or if it was on the Turnbuckle. At some point, I listened to so many of these interviews that they all just blend. But Bonza did talk about calling it Australian Professional Wrestling was one of the main reasons was because it shows up first in alphabetical order. So when you go to the channels, it's right there, which is fantastic. But also, you want to bring other promotions in. So I want to see more promotions jump onto the OVO Play roster because I'm a big fan of that whole system, and OVO Play has been fantastic. Huge fan. If you don't have OVO Play, it's well worth the $10 a month or $7 a week to sign up for OVO Play. So go to ovoplay.com and do that as soon as you can. There's a Newcastle Pro Wrestling show this weekend that you should definitely be checking out. In other news, Maddie Wahlberg has decided that the best way to prepare for Coliseum is to spend a week over in Perth with the EPW at the Royal Show. So every year EPW do an entire week stint at the Perth Royal Show. Last year, I believe it was Tyson Baxter and Jet Ruka did the show, and they've talked about it being a wonderful experience, about, learning so much in the week because they wrestle, multiple matches a day. So Matty Wahlberg, obviously preparing for Coliseum, sharpening his skills against some of the best in Australia. You got Damian Slater over there, Marcus Pitt, the Don, Gavin McGavin. Like he's going to be wrestling, against some of the top. Davis Storm and he have been going back and forth on Twitter, because Davis Storm is obviously booked in the Coliseum as well, and Matty Wahlberg calling him the grandfather of Australian wrestling, which I will admit, despite Davis Storm was like, oh, come on, Matty, you can do better than grandfather, but I got a chuckle out of it, man. Calling him the grandfather of Australian wrestling sorry, Davis. It was funny to me. I got a bit of a chuckle out of it. So he's going to be spending a week in I think it's next week. He will be in Perth for the EPW show. So definitely, if you're in Perth, get around it. If you're going to the Royal Show anyway, catch some graps while you're there. Catch up with Matty Wahlberg, of Survivor fame. He's a big celebrity now. So definitely get around that. But yeah, like I said, September's kind of an off month for Aussie wrestling. There's not a whole lot going on. It's not next week, actually. The Perth Royal Show is in October. So, I'm completely wrong. I apologize. But there's not a lot going on this month. There is a lot going on next month. And I feel like a lot of eyes are going to be on Australian wrestling because you got two big doubleheader weekends. In Melbourne, you got MCW 9 with 2 shows there. And then in Sydney the following week, the Coliseum weekend, the biggest tournament in Australian professional wrestling. It's basically our bowler, right? It's our bowler. It's our super strong style. It's our 16 carat. That is what Coliseum is aiming to be. And with Orange Cassidy, with Travis Banks being announced. I didn't talk about that because that happened last week, obviously, and I didn't have an episode last week. We'll get to that. Let's start with MCW because that's the first one in October. And the thing is, too, WWE are in town in October as well, doing some house shows across the country. In Melbourne, they're in Sydney, and Hartley Jackson is a part of MCW 9. So we can say pretty safely there's going to be some big eyes on Australian wrestling in October. We can expect people to get contracts, I'm assuming. I don't know how things work. Obviously, I'm a complete outsider. But I know we have talent, and I know there's going to be eyes on shows. So I'm expecting more people to get scooped up. Other big companies really need to start looking here because I know Shaza McKenzie had her little run with the Casino Battle Royale. AEW need to sign her immediately, bolster their women's division, maybe look at Jessica Troy as well. And I'd rather people get signed to other big companies like an Impact, like a New Japan, like a AEW, because they're still going to, theoretically, they're still going to be able to work the Australian shows. Whereas if you go to NXT, I mean, we're not getting Indy Hartwell on our shows anytime soon. So, it takes a while for that kind of thing to happen. Obviously, Travis Banks is coming for Coliseum, but it's one of those things I want to see other companies looking at Australia, not just WWE. So catch up, rest of the wrestling world, because WWE seem to know where it's at. Australia is booming, and having business is booming, to borrow a phrase from Flex. But so to have them here, to have the eyes on our country, everyone needs to be looking, not just WWE. So I'm really hoping for that. I'm hoping that OVO Play helps with that in October as well. And hopefully MCW can announce some live streaming for MCW 9. I don't expect them to announce it until like the week of, because they don't want to hamper ticket sales. They like having people fly over. I know people from Perth fly over, people from Tasmania fly up, people from all over the country are going into this MCW 9. And if I had the money, I'd be there too. So, but I really hope that they do get on a live streaming gimmick for this show. We've got the women's tournament happening. They're going to crown the first ever women's champion. Mikey J talked about this on the Turnbuckle this week, so definitely check out On the Turnbuckle. Mikey J stopped by and had a chat with the boys about the future of MCW, and it's looking bright as ever. But we've got we still don't know all the competitors for the women's championship tournament. I don't think. We've got some first round matches announced. Kellyanne versus Kingsley, Jessica Troy versus Tar Lee, Candy Lee versus Xena. And we know Steph DeLander has announced her intentions for winning this tournament. So Steph DeLander versus ? I'm thinking probably Avery. And I'm hoping my choice for this tournament is either Avery or Kellyanne. I think they make the most sense moving forward. But I would love to see some stuff happen there. I mean, Jess Troy versus Tar Lee. Jess Troy's the favorite there. I want to see Tar Lee pick up a win, not just because she's a buddy of mine, but because I want to see MCW do something different. And Jessica Troy's getting a huge push up in PWA, and obviously it is well deserved. I'm a huge fan of Jessica Troy. She's possibly my favorite wrestler in Australia at the moment. But definitely, we want to see MCW do something different. So I'm predicting a Tar Lee victory in the first round there. But it's looking like a fantastic tournament, and that's not the only thing happening as part of MCW 9. Obviously, Aussie Open are coming home. They've never wrestled in Australia as a tag team, so Aussie Open are going to be challenging for the tag team titles there in MCW. And is this a permanent homecoming or temporary homecoming at least? Because I've got friends in the UK who say they've been, after their shows in the UK lately, they've been kind of doing like little farewell segments. Like it seems like they're saying goodbye. Have their visas run out? I have no idea. But we know that they're coming back to Australia for the MCW show. Could they get announced for Coliseum? I would love to see them be announced for Coliseum. Mark Davis is someone who I would love to talk to for this show. So yeah, our Aussie Open coming home. You got to think they're not too long for Japan, right? They've had a New Japan IWGP tag title shot recently, and with World Tag League coming up, you got to assume that Aussie Open, they're one of the hottest unsigned tag team acts in the world. So having a chance to see them here in Australia for a while before they go to Japan would be really nice. So we're hoping it's a bit of a homecoming, but Aussie Open, at least for the time being, they're only booked at MCW on MCW 9. So it's definitely worth getting to Melbourne if you can to watch this show, because Aussie Open are fantastic. Also, you're looking at their homegrown stars. Dowie James is doing some of the best work I've ever seen from anyone in Australia. Heel Dowie is best Dowie. And I'm on record as being a big fan of Dowie James. Super Dowie, Normal is a Myth, love all that stuff. I'm a big fan of CK Dowie. I think it's hilarious. Pyro, what was his name in Underworld? Goddamn, Pyro something. He was fantastic there as well. And I'm like he was doing like a karate gimmick or martial artist sort of thing. And I pretty much regularly when I'm tweeting shows, I'm like, this Dowie's the best Dowie. This Dowie's the best Dowie. Antifa Dowie, anti-capitalist, fuck the system, fuck the fans, you're all jerks, I'm right and I know it, I know what's best. That Dowie, that's the best Dowie, man. I know I say this about every Dowie, but the promos that Dowie is putting out at the moment, his attack on the crowd, his attack on the match there, and then his subsequent verbal attack on the crowd was compelling viewing. Like, it went for like 15-20 minutes after the main event, but it was compelling, and the crowd were giving it to him. I don't think I've ever heard a crowd that hot. It was amazing. So heel Dowie is best Dowie, and I want more of that, and we're going to get more of that at MCW9. So despite September being a bit of a quiet month for us, October is looking huge. And of course, the big one for me, Coliseum. I'm a huge PWA fan. I'm flying all the way up to Sydney. I'm going to stay with some family. I'm going to hang out, and I'm going to be there for a week, but I'm so excited to catch Coliseum. If there's any other shows happening that weekend, let me know. I think there's a suplex show maybe happening that weekend, but I want to get to as many shows as I can while I'm there. But Coliseum, man, we've got 8 competitors as part of the Coliseum tournament. Orange Cassidy, Davis Storm, Maddie Wahlberg, Jessica Troy, Ricky South, Sam Osborne, Chris Basso, and Travis Banks. Oh man, I'm looking forward to this tournament so much. We have one first round matchup announced as of now, Jessica Troy versus Orange Cassidy. It's going to be, I don't know how I didn't even think of this matchup. Jessica Troy is the arm collector. Orange Cassidy keeps his hands in his pockets. How's she going to collect that arm? How's she going to get the armbar? How's she going to make him tap out? She will. I'm predicting a Jessica Troy win here. But I'm so looking forward to this matchup. Jessica Troy and Orange Cassidy. I didn't even think of it. Like, when I fantasy booked the tournament, I had Orange Cassidy against like your Maddie Wahlberg or your Sam Osborne. But have him against Jessica Troy, oh, it's brilliant. I can't wait to see that match. I can't believe I didn't think of it. Arm collector versus the guy with his hands in his pockets. It's so obvious, and I'm here for it. I am so here for it. You got to wonder what the implications of Travis Banks and Orange Cassidy being in the same tournament are. I mean, look, is Banks going to be a lock for the final? I assume he will. I assume Travis Banks is going to go all the way to the final. But do we want to see us send Travis Banks back to the NXT UK with a sword? Do we want Travis Banks to win the Coliseum? Having his name on the list of winners of Coliseum kind of gives it instant legitimacy. Whereas if you give the tournament to like a Maddie Wahlberg or a Sam Osborne or a Jessica Troy, that's brilliant for the future, because 4 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, when those are the biggest names in the wrestling world, which they will be, Ricky South too, you put it on him, and these guys are going to be huge in the wrestling world if things keep going the way they are. And then you get legitimacy then, like, oh, look at the people who've won Coliseum, look at these names. But if you have Travis Banks, it's going to give it instant legitimacy. Is that something that they want? Will WWE allow their NXT UK Golden Boy to come and be jobbed out? Well, it's not jobbed out if he loses in the final, but you get what I mean. Is he going to be able to take a loss, or is the condition of him appearing being that, he's going to have to win because he's a WWE guy, he's an NXT UK guy? I mean, he doesn't win on the NXT UK shows that much. No, he does. Anyway, I don't know. There's also the fact that Orange Cassidy's an AEW guy and Travis Banks is a WWE guy. Are we going to get away? Are PWA going to get away with putting them in the ring together at the same time? Are we going to see Travis Banks and Orange Cassidy in like a semi-final? How incredible would that be, seeing a WWE versus AEW match on Australian soil? There's so much potential there. You got to think that's not going to happen. You got to think that there's something in place that stops that from happening. But I mean, how amazing would it be if it did? Like, just the fact that they're both working the show when they're from rival companies is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to this show, though. And I mean, obviously having international guests is wonderful, but the real reason I'm looking forward to it is the PWA guys and the fan fest and being a part of Max Watts and the vibe and the community and all of that. For my money, I've been to MCW, I've been to PWA, I have not yet been to EPW, I have not yet been to anything in Queensland. But I've been to a lot of shows in Sydney, a lot of shows in Adelaide, and a few shows in Melbourne. And for my money, man, the The best wrestling venue in Australia is Max Watts. The best wrestling crowd in Australia is the PWA crowd. The MCW crowd are great, but the PWA crowd is next level. It is a community. It is a family. Everyone is over. It's super hot. And we talked to TJP about that. So let's have a chat with TJP about his time here in Australia and a bunch of other stuff. And then I'll hit you up after the break with what's happening this weekend near you. Like I said, it's a quiet month. Spoiler alert, not a lot happening because of Grand Finals month. But let's have a chat with TJP and see what he thought of his time in Australia.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey everyone, just want to take a second to tell you about one of our new sponsors, OUTBREAK NUTRITION. OUTBREAK NUTRITION are creating supplements for survival, sharper minds, quicker reflexes, all the energy you need to take your performance to the next level, whether that be on the field, in the gym, on the gaming field. That's right, they have specifically designed gaming supplements as well to help you focus on those late night sessions. They even sell coffee, you guys, at OUTBREAK NUTRITION. You can get coffee pods, you can get coffee beans, you can get supplements for the bedroom as well if you want to enhance your performance there. These are performance enhancing supplements for every aspect of your life, specifically designed by gamers, for gamers, to stay fit and healthy in the gym, to stay sharp and focused on the game, and to dominate in all areas of life. So check out OUTBREAKNutrition.com, and for being a listener of our podcast, they will give you 10% off your order when you enter the code B+. That is BPLUS at checkout. So make sure, if you want to stay on top of your game, if you want to take your performance to the next level, OUTBREAKNutrition.com, enter the code B+ at checkout. Hey guys, just a reminder, if you want to hear all of these wonderful B+ podcast episodes completely ad-free, make sure you head over to Patreon or Podbean, where we are the featured podcast this week. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month up to $10 a month, where anything you want to help us with, it really helps out. It's going to help us grow the site. It's going to help us redesign some things, and everything that we get through this and through the advertising as well is all going straight back into the podcast so that we can get Aussie Grapps out there for the rest of the world to hear about, for the rest of the world to see, so we can grow this mission of watch global, support local, and build indie wrestling. So if you want to be a part of that and get some really cool rewards like call-in shows, bonus episodes, ad-free like I mentioned, then head over to patreon.com/theb+ and subscribe today. Alright, my guest at this time, joining me by the magic of the internet from sunny California, provided my dodgy Australian internet holds up, of course. He is the winner of the first Cruiserweight Classic, the first Cruiserweight champion of the current lineage in WWE, the Phil Am Flash, and for this week, an honorary Aussie grappler. TJP, how are you, my man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for making the time.
Excuse me.
That's all right. We were talking about this just before we went on air.
We were just talking about this. I got caught up. But no, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time. Obviously, you're a very, very busy man at the moment, traveling all over the world.
Yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually breaking my gimmick for the first time ever because I'm the Aussie wrestling guy, right? Like, I talk to Aussie wrestlers and, like, grappler-adjacent people, I say, so other podcasters and what have you, commentators, all that sort of stuff. But I speak to people who are heavily involved in the Australian scene. Any other time I've had international interviews, I've given it to one of the other guys on the team. But I've dubbed you an honorary Aussie grappler for this week because you've spent quite a bit of time here over the last month or so.
Yeah, I spent like half of my August schedule in Australia, so I guess I am kind of honorary for the month.
Yeah, for the month. Yeah, the honorary Aussie grappler. Our first time ever, so it's a great honor to be the B+ honorary Aussie grappler. What did you think of the Australian wrestling scene, man? Because you were here for a while, you were doing seminars, you were on all the major shows. How did you find Australia?
I mean, I thought it was awesome. A lot of the guys I have met over the years from their excursions, coming stateside.
Yeah.
And, so I knew that there's a pretty deep talent pool, for Australia. And I didn't get a chance to really see a lot of the scene before, because I'd come out once before and I did a tour for wrestling, but it was with Big Day Out.
Yeah.
And so I got to see pretty much every single major city, and it was pretty awesome. I got to see some of the local guys because they were on different parts of the tour with us. and but I didn't get to see any of the local and regional cards, and I've always heard such good things about them, and obviously I've seen what some of the wrestlers can do because I've been in the ring with a lot of them. I've been to training with a lot of them. I've seen a lot of them, in locker rooms and other places, and so many phenomenal guys have come from there. And so I was really excited, and I was definitely not let down. Like, guys over there are really sharp, and I thought it's an incredible scene, coast to coast. And in this case, I did a lot of stuff in Sydney and Perth. So I got to see a little bit of that, but yeah, it's I thought the guys out there were pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, that's what. So you worked Matty Wahlberg for PWA, and I'm curious because I love Max Watts as a venue. Now, as someone who has been in a lot more historic and incredible wrestling venues than how do you feel Max Watts ranks up? Because to me, it's one of my favorite wrestling venues I've ever seen presented on TV or being there live.
Oh, I thought that it was a really incredible atmosphere. I remember mentioning at the time. I think I even said it after the match because I addressed the crowd and Maddie a little bit, and it's not just the venue, but the fans and the energy that they have is very unique, and you don't see that in a lot of places. It's sort of like it's kind of like an ECW-ish type of thing, you know? You see it in PWG over the last few years. That became kind of a thing, but you don't see it in too many places. I noticed it like in AAW in Chicago was the same way, but it definitely felt like that. It was they've created like a little universe for themselves and a bubble that they're in. And I remember being blown away because every single person that came out of the curtain was over. I was a guest star, and I was the least over person on the show.
Yeah, it's unique.
The atmosphere was incredible there, and I found that because I haven't been on the Indies in like 10 years almost. And it was like Ring of Honor straight to TNA for a few years, straight to WWE for a few years, and I didn't really do much in between those as far as like independence. Like I did a couple PWG things when I was available between those different promotions, but I didn't do a lot. And compared to before, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of promoters are kind of patterning their booking process off of like the way that music promoters are. So they'll book venues that are like kind of indie rock venues where you would go to like see a concert or like a music act.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the atmosphere that those venues create is incredible because you really feel the energy of the people, and it's built for live performances, and it's just different from general like Legion halls and stuff that independent wrestling used to be held in. Like these venues have like a built-in life to them, and I thought that show in particular had an incredible atmosphere.
Yeah, like the building becomes its own character as a part of the whole thing, really.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think it started with like Progress, right, over in the UK, and they had like their whole punk rock pro wrestling vibe, and I think they were one of the first guys that sort of started, or one of the first groups that started running sort of music venues and places like that to try to bring that extra layer of it. I think it makes it more professional. Like to me, like when you see it on TV, like you said, this is a place that's built for live performance, and the feedback loop that it creates between the crowd and the people in the ring is amazing.
Yeah. No, you definitely could see it. You could feel the energy. And I think that, that's very different than the way that, indie wrestling used to be kind of patterned before now. Like you start seeing that in a lot of places. I noticed it in like Seattle and Portland. A lot of their scene, like those shows are booked in venues that are very similar, like these places that you would go to see like a punk show or something. And it's a really cool feeling.
Yeah. And did it take you back, having the crowd be so hostile? I believe they fuck you TJ was like straight off the bat, like everyone in the building.
No, it doesn't. I don't know. I've always been kind of a polarizing guy for like trendy crowds. And it's kind of like, I don't know, like what Kobe Bryant was to NBA fans is like what I am to diehard wrestling fans. So if it's a casual audience, usually they take to me. I have to work really hard if I want them to hate me. That's what would happen. Like we would do like WWE live events in certain places like Texas, the Midwest or something like that. If it wasn't like diehard fans, then even if I had to be a bad guy, it was really hard. Like
Right.
it was just different. And but something about me not catering towards the diehard fans, man, they just they go to war with me every night. But I think that's good. I mean, the tension, and this is what I said that the night of, that tension makes it great. You know, if they didn't care, then that's a lot tougher. When the atmosphere is like that, whether it's hostile, energetic, or whatever, that's what makes it great. And I think I love having that type of atmosphere.
Yeah, well, wrestling, like comedy, right? It's all about building tension and then releasing the tension, the cathartic release and stuff. So it's kind of perfect for that. But I do want to get into some of the polarizing stuff very soon. But first, I want to also touch on the big match you had over in Perth with Damian Slater. Classic match. It's been released for free. People can check it out on YouTube. Instant classic, in my opinion. You have history with Damian Slater.
Yeah, we of all the guys that have come overseas that I had the pleasure of meeting and being in the ring with, I probably spent the most amount of time with Slater. And we probably trained the most together out of all the guys. But the one thing we never did was we never wrestled each other. So, and that was kind of weird because, like, you know, Mikey Nichols, Shane Haste, a lot of these guys, like I've been in the ring with them several times in different forms, but never with Slater. And I feel like we had the most similar style of all the different guys, and we spent the most time around each other, but we just never did. And finally, we had a chance to get in, and I mean, it was probably one of my favorite matches I've had in a long time.
Yeah, well, you tweeted about it, right? And you said that he should have been one of the guys that got picked up for 205 Live.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's always been a very gifted technician, and I think he's so well rounded and has an aptitude and understanding of you know, this game that he really should have been a guy that would have been like the spine of what we do, because he brings the best out of everybody he's in the ring with. And I know because it's like, we're very similar in that, like that's sort of like a skill that I've always had, is that a lot of times I'm able to be very good as a supportive character or a supportive person in the ring. Like, and, you know, as far as like being a ring general or being in there with somebody else, like, he's so good at bringing out the best in other people, and he's so good at the things that he does as well as an individual. He's really a complete package. And I really think that, you know, not having him there as one of like the key guys, like, I think that kind of hurt us a little bit, because he's kind of like one that got away.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't. It makes me really happy to hear you say that too, and to see that tweet made me really happy, because he does not get enough love internationally. Like, he's basically, I mean, Drew Gulak is like a next level guy for me. He's one of the guys that I absolutely idolize, and he's almost like Australian Drew Gulak to me.
No, absolutely, 100%, absolutely. And I know Drew a lot as well. We you know, we used to team a lot, and we've shared the locker room a lot together in other places, and he does with me as well. Remind me a lot of Drew in that way. He's got a similar toolbox, and he's really good, man.
Yeah. 205 Live though is one of those weird things. Like, it's gone through a few like phases. Like, there was the initial period where it was amazing, and then there was kind of the Enzo period. And now where it looks like 205 Live is probably going to be coming to an end. How does it feel like seeing fellow 205 Livers and you know, those guys that came up under that banner getting success on the main roster, and seeing that 205 Live situation kind of potentially fade away?
Well, I was asked recently, like, my take on what I would do differently for 205 now, and like how I would, I don't know, fix it or whatever. And my answer actually now is that I wouldn't. I kind of hope that the guys are able to be dispersed amongst the different rosters and allowed to just kind of fly and do what they do, because I think that is really what would be best for them now. And I'm really happy to have seen that the type of opportunity, because everybody wants and has different goals, you know, and I'm happy to see that so many guys now have had the opportunity to kind of get closer to the things that they want to do as individuals and not just be relegated to being part of this team on this one show. Because, now guys are able to kind of reach their full potential. It's good to see, like I remember telling Cedric before, I said, look, cause he gets kind of down on himself a lot. And I remember telling him like, this is when I was still a champion initially. We were riding together, and I remember telling him, if you give yourself a couple of years, forget this division. I think that you're a guy that could be doing stuff like the U.S. title and things like that. And like, sure enough, that's like literally exactly what the position
Lo and
is
behold,
right now.
yeah, working AJ
Yeah.
Styles on the pay-per-view, yeah.
Yeah, I remember very, very vividly on a drive between Indianapolis and Cincinnati, telling him to just kind of not like to hang in there, because it's not like he was like wanting to quit or anything, but just to let him know that, I think just being one of the older wrestlers in the locker room, like that's kind of what I kind of saw him able to do later on.
Yeah.
And to just kind of think about the long term. And, you see stuff like that, and they've tried to do similar things with Ali. Lucha House Party is I think that's incredible, because that's the type of thing that like New Day or like that's an act that starts to become universally applicable, and like them as characters, them as wrestlers are so well rounded that I think they found a great balance of both. And seeing like Drake do different stuff, Drake Maverick, and for the period of time they like with Leo, like having guys start to branch out, the Bollywood boys, like with Harv and Gerv, like all these guys are kind of breaking out from just being cruiserweights, and I'm just happy to see that. And I hope that, honestly, I just hope that they just find different places for these guys on different rosters. Maybe some of the UK guys can come back and be major players in the UK scene. Some of the guys like, Drew, Arya, like can end up on like SmackDown or Raw rosters and stuff like that, and just kind of find their own little niche where they can start doing things differently. Maybe it's NXT. I don't know. But yeah, I think that it would be really good for them to have that opportunity now.
Yeah, for sure. Do you look at it though as someone who decided to, call it a day with the company? Do you look at it and go, man, if I had stuck around, like I could be in this situation? Or do you feel like creatively the independence is sort of where it's at for you?
I think creatively this is sort of where it's at for me now, because I think nobody's in the same boat as anybody else. Like, if I was still there now, it doesn't necessarily mean I would be in a different position just because other guys are getting different positions, because then that's like rewinding and saying, well, if we were all together during the CWC, like maybe this guy or that guy would have won it, but it's like we were all there then, and it was just like that spot just felt right for me, I guess. So being there now, it's like, being flipped in reverse. Like that doesn't necessarily mean that I would be thriving or doing something. Maybe I did all that there was for me to do personally already. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But it just felt like the right time to go. I've always kind of been a firm believer that, you spend a few years somewhere, and especially if you're not having fun, that a lot of times it's just time to change it up. And I felt like I wasn't really contributing very well, and I wasn't in a position that was necessarily a commodity to the company. And so I wanted to change that, and we tried really hard to change it for like a year and come up with a new idea, and nothing was really there. So it just felt like, maybe the right decision is just to go.
Right. And so indie wrestling at the moment though is just insane, right? Like it looks to me like
crazy.
Everything's blowing up.
Yeah, no, it's I've never seen, in 20 years, I've never seen it like this.
So is this the best time to be an indie wrestler, to make a paycheck outside the machine? Is this the best time, at least in your career?
Oh, 100%. I think that a lot of it is just a sign of the times, because when I first started, this is like back in like 98, like internet wasn't really what it is now. Like it was barely a thing then. Like there was no social media, no anything, no YouTube. So there are so many different like ways that people can kind of become a brand and become a success like on your own now. Like when I started, guys didn't even make merchandise. Like you only had a shirt if you worked for like WCW or something like that. Like people, there was no merch table on the indies at that time. Not commonly anyway.
It was just like the 8x10s, right?
Yeah. And maybe not even that sometimes. Like it was very, like places didn't even sell their shows on tape. They didn't even tape a lot of their shows.
Wow.
It's just it was so different back then. And, now it's like with social media, it's like you could have a Twitch channel, you could have a YouTube channel, you could have, Patreon content, you could have merchandise, you could have all these different forms of merchandise.
Yeah.
Not just a t-shirt, but all this different stuff. And, you can organize appearances because now shows are connected to like conventions like StarCast or like, there's so many different ones like that. And like, you can do Comic Cons and you can like get into all these different things that you can do on top of just wrestling, which there's more companies now than there's ever been. So I think, just a sign of the times and maybe sign of the technology of the time before as opposed to now, like there's just so much more opportunity to command your own brands than there ever was in the past.
Yeah, it does have a downside though, right? Because like you mentioned, you're a bit of a polarizing figure. Something that's very hot topic on the internet at the moment with the whole Dave Chappelle comedy special and stuff is like cancel culture, right? And you ran up against some elements of wrestling Twitter that wanted you canceled. How do you find that whole situation, like that side of the social media game?
So I don't know. One thing I realized with being in bigger, like when seeing the way the world is laid out as far as wrestling goes, being in like going from like the indies to like Ring of Honor to like Impact, then to like WWE for a few years. Demographically, you realize like how small these bubbles are because they're really not that big, and they're not all necessarily associated with each other. But each one of them thinks that they are the whole world. And the only people that see all of it are the performers, because we're the ones that are taking in all the positive and the negative,
right?
And getting
all the tags, all the hashtags, etc.
Yeah, like. But if you're on the other end of that, you think you represent the whole world, but in real life, you're not seeing anybody else because you have already weeded out people you don't like or you don't think about. Like if you're a fan on the internet, you've already cultivated and curated your own online experience to have blocked or muted people that don't think like you because you don't like them, you know? And so you only hear 100% of what you agree with already. So it's like, it gives people a skewed version of what they think is everything. So like, for example, like being with WWE, it kind of made me realize like, let's take America, for example. A big independent show outside of a major company maybe draws at best like 1,000 people to it. That would be massive,
right?
And if you say that 1,000 people for like an independent show, like you have to be more than a casual fan to be attracted to a show like that. So that would represent like a diehard type of fan, right?
Yeah.
Or like your internet fan, quote unquote, I guess would be another way to put it. So, if you figure like that is about the max amount of people you can draw to a show like that. And, we'll say like, if you break up the country by like regions, and we'll say by like states, there's 50 states, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest show in any one area will draw like 1,000 people. We'll say maybe that's not every diehard fan in the area, but if you double that, let's say that's like 2,000 fans in that area that represent that. And for the whole country, that's like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
But then you look
at
not
a lot in a population of millions.
No, not at all. And then when you think, so when you think about it, like on Instagram, for example, I have like 375,000 people, I think, following me. When I think about the grand scheme of thing, like the numbers, like when I come across people that are overly positive, overly negative, it's easy for me to be like, I'm not that worried about it, because you don't really, like, the bubbles aren't as big as people think they are. So a lot of times it's just more about louder voices, not so much bigger numbers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Like people are just in general more likely to be vocal about something they hate than something they love.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing too is like if you and most fans aren't on the internet, and therefore they're not part of, quote unquote cancel culture. And that's a hard thing, or a weird thing for people to wrap their heads around. But truthfully, if you think about it, like let's say you watch Monday Night Raw, and Seth Rollins comes to the ring, goes up on the corner post, you see thousands and thousands and thousands of flashbulbs going off, because these are thousands of people taking pictures of this guy.
Yeah.
If you go on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook or something like that and try to search hashtags for photos of people that went to the show that night, you might only find a few hundred photos of Seth on that ring post.
Right.
But 20,000 people just took his picture. But you only find like 500 pictures maybe of him that have been posted. Like, if you take a picture and you're online, what do you do with that picture? Immediately you post it. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example of, like, that's thousands and thousands of people who aren't even on the internet. They just took that picture and that's on their camera roll just for themselves. And they're not part of the online conversation that people think that everybody's a part of. And it's really not everybody. It's just a special cross section of people.
Right. So for up and coming wrestlers that are experiencing hate online for the first time, it's not a huge deal because it's a fraction.
It's not terrible. I think if you're a good human being and you're not trying to act out of line, it's easy to just take a breath and just relax, because it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, the weirdest thing to me though was just the reason you ran across these cancel culture quote unquote situation was literally like a political opinion, nothing to do with wrestling, nothing to do, like, you didn't hurt anyone, you didn't do a Josh Bodum. It was literally just an opinion that people didn't like. It was so weird to me to see that all happen.
Oh, in this case, I'm assuming the net neutrality.
Yeah,
thing.
The net neutrality was the big one that I saw that blew up near me. Yeah.
I'm shocked that people think that was a real opinion. Because I actually don't care. I don't care about net neutrality at all whatsoever. I don't really have any thoughts of it, like for or against it necessarily that I feel strongly about. I don't even vote in my real life.
Yeah.
I'm not an overly political person, so I think it's and the reasons I was poking about it is shocking to me that people. It's kind of like the equivalent of a wrestling promo and somebody saying, like SCU, this is the worst town I've ever been in.
Right.
Like, nobody really believes that, because it's kind of played out. Like, the thing, like the pokes I was taking at it were so very obviously not real. I don't understand why people think that was, but it was a way to push people's buttons, I guess. That wasn't abrasive, obviously not prejudice, and my job was to be a bad guy at the time, so I had to be a bad guy.
Yeah, so you're happy to poke the bear when it's your job to be the villain.
Well, I mean, when it's not going to hurt somebody, yes. I would feel terrible if I ever chose a subject matter that alienated somebody. Like, that's terrible. Like, you can't use prejudice things to force a reaction for, like, a character thing. That's taking it too far.
Right.
Because people could be hurt by that. But in this case, people were worried about losing Twitter. Like, they're worried about losing the internet, and that's silly. Like, that's just that's not a real problem in the world, So, so I was shocked that people took it so seriously and thought that it's real. In real life, I don't really care that much about it. I would hate to see people lose it. I would hate to see people lose the internet if they get throttled and they can't afford it. But on the other hand, knowing business, nobody was ever going to do that to you anyway, because they need you to be able to afford it.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it costed $4 billion to institute, which I think is a lot of money that could have been used for student loans or medical, but that's really the extent that I care about it. I don't really care about anything else.
Yeah, right. Well, look, is that something you touched on there with, obviously if it was something that was going to hurt someone, or more sensitive subject matter, you'd stay away from it. And is that something that performers now need to be hyper aware of with this modern age of the internet and all the wonders that come with it? Like you said, like all the different ways you have to make merchandise and all this sort of stuff. Is it something to be hyper aware of? Like the situation with El Phantasmo and the comments he made, in the heat of the moment in a promo, completely unscripted towards Will Ospreay, and he obviously apologized and he seemed like he had the right attitude about it. But is it something that you have to be hyper aware of, like when you're in the heat of the moment?
Well, I mean, definitely you have to be, and I think it's kind of a complex compound answer because it's one of those things where a sign of the times, right? Like different times in the world, there's different ways that communication goes over. But I think at any point, especially dealing with that type of subject matter, like, yes, you always need to be careful because, and then this is my take, like, I don't ever want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I would never want anybody to feel like they're treated unfairly or something like that. Outside of that, I do think that we kind of reached a time where we're pretty good about defending each other. I think the world is, like we don't really let a lot of people get away with a lot of stuff anymore. And it's been that way for a while. But I do think that maybe now we need to put the swords down a little bit because there are going to be people that make mistakes like what you just mentioned. And, they don't necessarily mean any harm by it. And they don't necessarily need to be ostracized because of it. I think it's just trying to find a level of mutual understanding.
Yeah, and finding that sweet spot for, being able to give people a chance at redemption if you make a mistake, because everyone makes mistakes.
Right. Well, like I remember one time, speaking of like the net neutrality stuff, I remember one time a lot of people got on like a train of thinking that like I'm against women, for example. And it came from something that they'd said or taken from me, but it was taken out of context. And I had said that I was having a conversation with friends of mine about the topic of equality, and we were talking about how, and I don't remember the exact quote was, but it was like hating men is going to end up being like a bigger obstacle than hating women. But I didn't say that because I feel like we need to protect men. That's silly. And I didn't say that because I think that we should disregard women, because that's also silly. That's stupid.
Yeah.
The point is that if we make it normal and we normalize like hatred of perceived majority groups, that pushes them away from the table. So we want to keep everybody at the same table so the conversation keeps going. You know what I mean? So it's like, obviously if you go against and, are prejudiced against like women or a minority or something like that, or somebody because of their orientation or religion or whatever, like that's obviously not good and that's unacceptable. But I think that doesn't make them not want equality anymore. Everybody's still on board with that. But if you push the majority away, they're going to be less inclined to like make it work in the future. And what we want to do is to get them to understand. And so like, that's really, I think, where we are, is that we want to keep everybody at the table. We don't want to make anybody feel alienated. Doesn't matter what group you're from, because we want everybody to be able to head in the same direction,
Right. Yeah. And so context, when these comments get brought up and used, context is super important. Like I always say, like with videos, if people ever share a video of something that's shocking, this person said this, I can't believe it. I'm like, okay, I need to find the original video and watch a minute either side, because I need to know why they've said this thing. Because but going back to so obviously I mentioned the El Phantasmo, so that took place at the Super J Cup, right? And you were there, New Japan Pro Wrestling. How did it feel? What did it mean to you making a return to New Japan and in LA of all places?
So, man, I've never been so happy to be eliminated from a tournament in my life because. So I got through the first round and then was eliminated in the quarterfinals. And the thing was, with a 3-night tournament, and obviously be like incredible to go far, win it, get to the finals, whatever. Plus I was in a bracket where some of the matches I could have had were like incredible matchups, potentially. Yeah. And the J Cup is that's why I got into wrestling. Like not everybody, but it's like everybody has their WrestleMania moment. I never cared about a WrestleMania moment ever, not once. Never once cared if I was at WrestleMania or not. But I always said I want to be in New Japan, and someday I would love to do the J Cup. And I thought both of those were pipe dreams. Like, I'll never get that. New Japan fell on my lap immediately when I was a teenager. But the J Cup, I mean, there's only been like, before this year's, there was only like 6 of them ever. So it's like, that seemed like impossible. Like when is it ever going to come around at a time when I can do it? And there's only been a handful of North Americans that have ever done it. And it's like, that'll never happen. And it did. So I was like, man, this is incredible. And then to top it off, this is Liger's last year. And, you know, I was saying when I was at the J Cup listening to his music every night, that when I was a teenager, I took it for granted. I used to watch him wrestle all the time, watch him go out through the tunnel, listen to his music and all that. And it's like, these are the last times we're going to be hearing his music and seeing his entrance, you know? Like after this, like he'll be making special appearances maybe, but that's it. These are the last times we get to see this, and you take it for granted after all these years. And so going back to what I was saying in the beginning, like if I don't lose in the quarterfinals, then I have to go to LA and do 1 or 2 singles matches, which are cool matches. And yes, it's my hometown, but the flip side of it was losing in the quarterfinals means I get to be in the tag match with Red and Liger and Taguchi, and across the ring from Rocky Romero, who's like a brother to me. And we started together. Both of us wanted to do the J Cup and to do New Japan one day. And it's like, here I am in Los Angeles in one of Liger's last matches, maybe ever in LA, and one of his last matches ever, period. And being on the team with him, coming out to his music in my hometown, and I won the match. Like, it's like, I've never been so happy.
I can hear in your voice. You're like a child again.
Man, I've never been so happy to be eliminated in my life. When I saw the lineup for LA, I was like, yes, this is awesome. This is better than winning it. It's awesome.
Yeah. How do you think it'll stack up going to wrestle in the motherland? Because you're heading to Philippine Wrestling Revolution, right? Talking about indie wrestling, Southeast Asia's popping off.
Yeah, the scene has been pretty crazy. Like what with like OWE, like the stuff over in China. And then,
and Singapore Pro Wrestling are doing big things as well.
Yeah, Singapore, and then I'd heard some stuff about like Taiwan has a little bit of a scene going, and so
Robbie just went to Malaysia. Malaysia have some good stuff happening there too.
Yeah, so I'd seen PWR for like a little while, and I've kind of followed what they're doing, obviously, just for bias reasons, and they really only have like a couple companies out there that run regional cards, and they're doing so well, but it's just like there's just not enough awareness for them. And so getting out, and obviously getting into contact with them and meeting them and stuff like that. And I did a small little Asian appearance tour back in the springtime, and I was able to sit down and meet with them during some of my off days, and just the opportunity to come back and help them to help them build a bigger card. Obviously we got Jeff Cobb on the card as well, which is pretty big for them. Yeah. And a bigger venue and stuff like that, just to help contribute to that scene and help bring more awareness to it is incredible. Like I'm so excited for this upcoming week, because all week long I'm going to have different press and interviews and different things that I'm doing just to to in regards to the show, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is why I was like, I have to break the gimmick, because you spent a month here in Australia, you did, and now you're doing the Philippine Wrestling Revolution thing, and I'm a big champion of the Southeast Asia scene. I think that there's a lot of good stuff happening, and not enough people are talking about it. Like, if you look at the major wrestling sites, PW Torch, Voices of Wrestling for me is one I'm a big fan of. You look at all these sites that no one's talking about it.
Right.
And it's crazy to me. So hopefully you being there is something that can help get more eyes and get more people aware that it's happening, because it is happening. Yeah.
To them being able to do a bigger show than they're used to. And what I would like is for if we're able to raise the bar for them, that the bar stays at that height so they can continue to raise it, without me in the future. And as they go on to keep growing and growing and growing, because I think that they have a lot of talent there as well. It's just that, you know, and they have such a blank slate to work with in the Philippines. Like it's such a like just Filipino people are very passionate about the things that they're into.
Yeah.
In general. And so I just think that once they garner some momentum, having that momentum will be incredible for them. So, you know, I'm looking forward to helping them continue to build.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it because it reminds me of what Will did here, right? Will came over here and was like, well, I like what's happening here and I want to, you know, I think he even used the phrase "put you guys on the map," but you know, which is a phrase that gets used a lot. Put indie wrestling on the map. But Will, he did bring extra eyes into PWA and all that sort of stuff. And now you look at what PWA are doing now, and like you said, you came out and you were the least over guy on the roster as this. You're a former WWE champion, and you are the least over guy on this local show.
Yeah, and I definitely got a reaction. There's like we started out with dueling chants, and then the ones that were against me really took over. But like, so there was a lot of reaction for me. But to say that everybody had a massive reaction that night is pretty crazy because
it was huge.
That's just a sign. Yeah, that's a sign of a really healthy scene and like fans being really in tune with everybody. Like everybody that came out in that battle royal. It was like special guest star, like, you know, like it's like watching a sitcom and everybody applauds when, you know, the main guy comes out like Zach Morris or Urkel or somebody. Yeah. But it's like everybody was Zach Morris. Everybody was Urkel. It was perfect. And I was like, man, this is amazing. This is such a healthy atmosphere.
Did you meet the man, the myth, the legend, James Adultman?
No, unfortunately, I went looking for him backstage and all I could find was his hat. But I was so excited when James Adultman came out. I immediately took some photos and video and sent it to Brian Kendrick because I have a feeling he would be a big fan of James Adultman.
I'm a big fan of our wrestling Twitter. Our little Aussie wrestling Twitter blew up with that. Like he got over straight away. He's selling shirts and stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, look, my Impact guy, Mr. Mysterious, he would hate me if I didn't ask you about your return to Impact. Particularly, I know he's very curious about this whole situation with Fala Bar you got going on and helping him find his voice.
Yeah, coming back to Impact was cool. Like the last few years I was in WWE, I don't watch a lot of contemporary wrestling. Mostly I watch old stuff, but you know, I watch a lot of what my friends are in and stuff like that. So I like to support like my friends and, obviously, and, I kind of watched them quietly build this awesome roster for the last couple of years, you know, and even before I was like, even considering leaving WWE, I remember watching, I was like, man, if I wasn't here, I'd love to be there. Cause like this is like the best I've ever seen them. I just felt like they needed more coverage, like a better TV deal. I just think that was the only thing. And so now, like in the time that I've, you know, been available and like they've added so many people who are like good friends of mine, you know, Rich Swann, Willie Mack, and guys that are still there that I loved being in the ring with before, like Eddie Edwards, you know, Sammy Callahan's there now. You know, he's awesome. Tessa's one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. They have such an incredible roster there. And so I was really excited to come back. And now being back, like I remember like just coming in the door the first time. I hadn't even met him yet at the time. I was like, I have to do some stuff with Fala Bob just because, you know, we're fellow Filipinos, and sure enough, like very stereotypical, we hit it off right away.
Yeah.
and we're so outgoing and connected right away. And so I'm really excited to do some stuff with him coming up because this is like the type of, you know, this is the type of wheelhouse I really wanted to get into with WWE and even before WWE, like to be able to kind of really represent like my roots and be, you know, be myself more and show that off more and be that as a character because that's who I am. And I didn't really have the opportunity to do that a lot of times because people, I think they see my ability for wrestling, and then they just want me to be the wrestler's wrestler. And at times that can really be kind of boring, you know? And I felt like there was this whole side of me, this whole layer and whole chapter of my life that I wanted to, people to be able to see. And I'm excited because, you know, follows, and he's like any cousin I've ever had. So it's like, it fits perfectly.
My partner's Filipino, and she talked about like the bond that you have with any other Filipino immediately. And like you said, it's very stereotypical. But I gotta ask, have you seen Jeppy Paraiso? The comedian? He does like Facebook videos about like, you know, when the Filipino aunt.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, because it's absolutely hilarious. So I just wanted to bring that up. But
well, it's kind of like like when Joe Coy does like Filipino social like introspective things, where it's like, you know, like how Filipino moms are, how you know your elders are and your cousins and stuff like that, or how his kids are compared to him, like when he was great, like stuff like that. I it's so funny because I instantly relate to that, like yeah, so I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, well, being around my extended family now, because I've married into this family, and so being around it, like when I watch Joe Coy, I'm like, I know that cousin, I know that aunt as well. It's absolutely hilarious to me. So just hearing that you guys had that bond, it makes me very happy. And I have to ask, is Bar, like the language that Bar speaks, is that just a regional dialect? Is that?
Well, I mean, for the most part, he's got a very short vocabulary, not quite regional. Maybe it would depend on the region, I guess you could say.
Because I know there's a lot of languages in the Philippines, so I don't want to insult anyone. I just want to find out if it's a regional dialect or if it's unique just to Fala.
Well, what I like to think of it like I'm kind of the Han Solo to his Chewie, and most people don't know what he's saying, but I know what he's saying.
I love it.
Okay.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. All right, so last question before I let you go, man, because I really appreciate the time that you've had. Can we expect more of TJP on the indie circuit? Because, you know, you're showing up everywhere lately. New Japan and Impact, not really indies, but, you know, you've been all over the place. Can we expect more TJP on the indie circuit? Can we expect more Australia? Or can we expect you to sign on the dotted line again in the near future with one of these major companies?
Well, I guess technically 100% to all of that. Mainly when I was coming back, and I talked to everybody a little bit as far as like major companies or something. But what was a fit for me that I really wanted was I wanted something, as long as my setup included a lot of freedom for me to do the things I wanted to do, I was happy. It gave me a lot of freedom. And with New Japan, obviously, same deal, you know, especially as of right now. And going forward, like that, I'm like I continue to get dates, you know, being offered for my schedule, and I'm going to continue to pack them in for as long as I can. And anywhere I land, if I choose a landing spot, it'll have to include the ability to maintain some of that freedom, because I want to keep doing the things I'm doing right now. And, you know, I think it's going really well. And speaking of Australia, I know that I think some of the guys were trying to organize for me to return. I think they were hoping maybe November, but if not then soon after that. But yeah, so there should be more, you know, as far as that neck of the woods and in general.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. And where can people find you online? Give us all the social handles and stuff so that they can get you and what you've got coming up as well.
Well, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, both under Mega TJP, and you could find my Detonation Kick brand, which also has my touring schedule and everything, at detonationkick.com. So for anybody that if you've come to a live event somewhere and you didn't get a chance to grab something of mine, maybe we didn't have a size or a style that you wanted, you can find all the stuff there. And then if you're looking for cities I'll be in, I haven't updated it recently because I'm a bad adult. I should probably talk to James Adultman about that.
He'll be able to help you. He will.
Yeah, I will have an updated schedule with more dates coming up soon, because they're coming in. They're still coming in as much as they were earlier in the year, and so you can find what city I'll be in there, and that's pretty much it. I'm not the biggest social butterfly online, but you can find me at those places and at that site.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it as well.
So there you have it. TJP, first ever Cruiserweight champion in the current lineage of the WWE Cruiserweight title, the winner of the Cruiserweight Classic, and honorary Aussie Grappler. I was about to say my first bona fide international superstar, but he's not. I've spoken to Robbie Eagles a couple of times, and Robbie Eagles is a bona fide international superstar at this point. I've spoken to Jonah Rock. He's a bona fide international superstar. Adam Brooks. We've had a few on this show, but, TJP, not from Australia, but he's getting the honorary Aussie award for the month that he spent here because, he did the seminars. He worked with the talent. He had a match in Suplex with Lynx Lewis Jr. that you can get on YouTube, which was a fantastic, fantastic match that really opened my eyes to, oh, hey, there's this guy that I haven't seen much of, Lynx Lewis Jr., and I need to see more of him. So, hats off to TJP. Big fan of his work, and it was really fun to have a chat with him. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. You're a busy man, obviously, and we appreciate you stopping by the B+. If you like that interview and you like Aussie Grappler interviews or Grappler adjacent people interviews, definitely check out On the Turnbuckle this week as they talk to Mikey J. Also, Shaza McKenzie, everyone's favorite Aussie, Shaza McKenzie, and Jessica Troy are on Conco and the Fudge this week, so definitely check those out. And if you want to get out and support the guys and girls of Australian wrestling this weekend, not a lot of places you can do it, but here in Adelaide on Saturday night, ACW Evolve is taking place at the ACW Arena. It's now a licensed venue. You can have your beers while you watch Richie Taylor and Adam Brooks and all the ACW crew go at it. PCW Slam and Ignition take place Friday and Saturday night, respectively, at the Southeastern Entertainment Center. Of course, you can get on the PCW network now as well. I've got my login. I have yet to actually watch any shows, but I'm very much looking forward to the PCW network. I want to get around it because I hear there's fantastic wrestling there. I know some of the people that I've seen have really impressed me. Obviously, Royce Chambers, Sid Parker works there, Erica Reed, Indy Hartwell, and the Phillip brothers came from there. So PCW is one to watch if you're in Melbourne, and they run shows every week, every single week. So if you ever have a Friday or Saturday where you're like, oh, I don't know what to do tonight, Southeastern Entertainment Center, PCW, you may know it as the place you go to watch World Series Wrestling, right? It's the same venue. It's an amazing venue. It's built for wrestling, and definitely get out and check out some PCW if you can. And if you can't, get onto the PCW network and start catching up. In Perth, WPW Uncensored takes place on Friday night, and Schwa have a show on Saturday as well. So get to their respective Facebook pages for more details. In New South Wales, Kingdom Pro Wrestling Uprising House of the Elite takes place on Saturday night. Brilliant marketing tying the Elite name in there. I think a lot of people will think it's hokey, but I think it's brilliant because anyone searching for Elite Wrestling will possibly stumble across this and be like, oh, there's wrestling in Newcastle. Let's go check it out. Also in Newcastle Pro Wrestling 82 live on OvoPlay from Club Charlestown. I'll be watching. I hope you're watching as well. OvoPlay.com, $7 for a week. Sometimes that'll get you multiple live shows in the week. You can always go back and watch the on-demand offerings as well. $10 a month, and you're getting 3 to 4 shows a month at least on this, usually more. OvoPlay, well worth the dollars, and that's what it's about. It's about putting your dollars where you believe they are deserved. It's about supporting the boys and girls of Aussie Pro Wrestling. So get out to a show, buy a shirt, cheer the good guys, boo the bad guys. And if you want to support us, if you believe in what we do, you can do so at patreon.com/theb+. You can follow me at GregUnchained on Instagram. You can follow me at GregUnchained on Twitter and Stationhead, where I spin tunes while I prepare for these podcasts. You can also follow me at the GregUnchained on Instagram. We collectively are the B+ Wrestle on Twitter because wrestling wouldn't fit the B+ Wrestling everywhere else. Like, share, subscribe, 5-star review if you like what we do. And thank you so much for listening.